love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again with another UFC breakdown. This time we're heading to Russia, Moscow, Russia, for this pretty heavy Russian card. Before we get into that, we're going to do our usual 10 minutes of looking at bets, polls, comments, all of that kind of stuff. I feel like every week I have more to mention before I actually get into the card. So for anyone who doesn't want to listen to everything I have to say, there's timestamps in the description. So the UFC 244 breakdown went absolutely insane. I believe it has roughly 35,000 views as of now, and I've picked up quite a few, at least 200 plus subscribers in the last week. So if you're a new subscriber, thank you very much. If you've been following the channel for a long time, and you know, I know who you are, so appreciate to blowing up that 244 breakdown. What else do I have to say before I get into this? Oh yeah, 2K subs. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for 2K subscribers. That makes me very happy, and I can't wait to get 3K too. So moving on into the bets. I didn't invest a massive amount into this pay-per-view because I really wanted to enjoy it. But profit-wise, really beautiful. £330+ profit. The only cover I played was Nate Diaz decision, which was 30 quid because I had 200 plus coming in on Masvidal. So only one cover, a really small cover. I still finished with over £300 profit. And Derek Lewis, man, Derek Lewis and Darren Till were the main reasons why I really finished with a decent profit on that card. So what's next? Polls. Okay, the poll. Here's the poll for the 244 main event. We have 53% for Nate Diaz, the human kangaroo. We have 47% for Ponytail. Can't argue with this. You cannot argue with this. You know, I said it in the breakdown. For anybody who says I for sure 100% know what's going to happen, you was lying. And these percentages, they make complete sense. You know, it was basically a 50-50 fight. Masvidal, man, he done very well, but I'll get into the recap in a second. So looking at some comments. Now, I got so many comments on the UFC 244 video, like 300 plus comments. So listen, I appreciate all of the supportive comments, but I haven't got time to show all of them. But what I will do is show a few now, and then when I have a little smoke break in, say, 30-40 minutes time, I'll show a few more then. So here's a few. Edmund wins KO first round. Diego, beautiful, mate, beautiful, absolutely beautiful prediction. From Ali, bro, I have £200 on Till at 2.70. Ridiculous line. Really feel he gets it done, mate. That's what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. If you know, £200 on Till, that's a beautiful night for you, sir. Jacob Kirk, I think people are going to lose a lot of money on Walker. I've got 29-28 Anderson. Walker comes out like a bat out of hell, trying to live up to his own hype in round 1, and gets wrestled to death in round 2 and 3. Well, well, I mean, Corey didn't even need to wrestle. He didn't even need to wrestle. He just straight took his head off, man. And you could, like, I felt a little bit bad for Johnny Walker because you could see that his body was asleep. His body was asleep during that barrage of damage. You know, his body was sleeping, but his brain in his face, man, that was the only thing awake. And it was hard to see because usually it's the other way around, right? Usually the body, it gets a little bit wobbly, but then it comes back, but the head, it is a bit foggy. But with Johnny Walker, man, it was the other way around. His body was completely loose after those strikes that landed. And if anyone, some of you may not have seen this, but the first bomb Corey Anderson threw and landed, Johnny Walker, when he ate it, he went to kind of showboat, like kind of open his mouth like, "Ooh, you hit me." But the second that bomb landed, if you watch the slow-mo, he starts to open his mouth like, whoa, okay. But Corey Anderson is not playing into it. He just comes through with the next bombs, and those are the real bombs that do all the damage. So for anybody who's a fighter in the UFC, if you're listening to this, if you land a bomb on Johnny Walker, do not be mistaken with his face and his showboating, because I don't think many people saw that. Johnny Walker really tried to play that first bomb off, but instantly got caught with others. It's a good shout, Jacob. Amir, bro, Edmund is 10 years younger and constantly learning. I'm going to have to go against you on this one. Without a doubt. Without a doubt, man. I mean, I've taken Edmund in all of his fights, and this was the only time I felt, you know what, he's against a guy who's very seasoned, very experienced, and Edmund just proves, man. As soon as he got that finish, I just tweeted out, like, this kid is the future. This kid is the future, man. He's for real. He ain't messing around. Great shout, mate. Josh, Derek Lewis is in shape. Winking face. I don't know about that, mate. Okay, so those are the comments. If you want to follow me on social media, here is my social media. Hit me with a follow if you want to chat on Fight Night or anything else. We're going to do a quick recap of the 244 card. So the first fight of the night was Hakeem versus Julio Arce, and I really liked that fight. That fight was a 15-minute competitive matchup, and you know what? That fight really, it basically said to us, look, you don't get much closer than that. Enjoy the rest of your night of competitive fights. Like that fight was good. I really liked it. I felt the first round, Hakeem came out and did exactly what I said. He'd target the lead leg when it was stationary, compromise the movement, and look to dictate the fight. In the second round, it was much closer. I still feel it could have been 2-0 after that round. If it was 1-1 on anybody's scorecards, then I don't disagree with it. It was very close. Round 2 and 3 were very close rounds. The only evident round was round 1 for me. So a little bit surprised that it was a split, but at the same time, if you're a judge and you're scoring round 2 and 3 to Arce, you can't really go against it because it was close. But if you're a judge, if you score all 3 rounds to Hakeem, you can't go against that either. So I feel the right result was made though. Lyman Good and Chance, man, Lyman Good was 9-2 TKO, and I looked at it and I just thought, you know what, I'm not even going to touch it. I wish I did. I wish I did. Lyman looked great, you know, evidently winning the stand-up battle. Yeah, was never really taken down at all. Kept it on the feet. His gas looked good. Calf kicks were there, those brutal calf kicks. Yeah, Lyman Good, really, really impressed with his performance. Caitlin Chikagian, Jennifer Maia, really, you know, that was it was a decent battle, man. But Caitlin Chikagian has fought some decent competition, man. She's been in there with hard hitters before, and Jennifer Maia was just, she couldn't get into her rhythm. You know, that was a Caitlin Chikagian fight. Very good performance from her. Rosenstruik and Arlovsky, man, some people said Arlovsky would take him down and look to win that way. I felt that wouldn't be a way for Arlovsky. And Rosenstruik, man, he got it done quick. That guy has some kind of touch of death in his glove. Like the way Arlovsky just kind of felt, it was like he got shot. Like, so smooth from Rosenstruik, and I'm really looking forward to seeing his career in the next couple of years. Edmund Shabazian and Brad Tavares. I mean, what more can you say? Edmund Shabazian said it. I'm going to show you guys the new breed of MMA. We just have to sit back and go, you showed us. That was so legit, man. He was calm and composed when he had Brad hurt too. And the head kick finish, it was nasty. It was really nasty. Shane Burgos and Amir Khani. Now, Amir Khani was one of my underdogs. And I felt the first round, you know, it was a good round. But one thing I did say about Shane is his size. He imposes his size inside the octagon so well. And he's not just this random 145er that you're looking to grapple with, you know. If you're using that type of energy for 5 whole minutes with Shane Burgos, you best really land some horrible damage. Because if you don't and round 2 starts, Shane is going to show you, look, you didn't just wrestle some 145er. You're wrestling a guy who's nearly 170 or so inside the octagon. So Shane Burgos, man, looked really good. Kept it in the pocket. Takedown defense was very good after the first round. Really looking forward to seeing Shane Burgos fight again. And I recently watched his Calvin Kattar fight recently. Yesterday. That was a very... Man, I literally forget how good that fight was. I knew it was good, but man, that was an amazing fight. Corey Anderson, Johnny Walker. So Dana White has come out and said, like, Johnny Walker, you know, you can't play around in there, you can't goof around in there when you're at this level. The thing is, that's what he's always done. He's always got loose in there, looking for his openings. But one thing he said fight week, I don't know if anyone heard this on MMA Junkie or anywhere else. Fight week, he said a few times, I want to go 15 minutes. I want to test myself. I want to hurt him a little bit but not finish him. And as much as I said to myself all week, when he gets in there, he's going to be the same. He's going to hurt his opponent. He just kept this loose, unorthodox movement with no explosion. So maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he really did want to go 15 hard minutes. But that's... You have to do what got you to the dance. What got you to the dance is what's going to get you through this dance. So why change now? But I don't want to take too much credit away from Corey Anderson. You know, he came in, like Dana said, very angry this fight week, and he got it done, man. He got it done against a guy who not many people were going against. And if you was going against Johnny Walker, it was probably because you was favouring Corey Anderson's wrestling. So to see him get it done like that, we can't take anything away from him. We have to say, you know, fair play to Corey Anderson. I saw him getting starched in the flesh back in 2017 to Jimmy Manuwa. And to see him get that done the way he did, you know, I'm really impressed with Corey Anderson. Kevin Lee, Gregor Gillespie, 2 very good wrestlers. And now this is, you know, this is a stand-up fight. You know, I just said about, you know, Johnny Walker, do what got you to the dance. Gregor Gillespie, man, people were comparing you to Khabib. I honestly thought you'd wrestle. I know you shot once, but if we're going to keep it stand up with Kevin Lee, I spoke about those high kicks, man. Kevin Lee, he's thrown a few high kicks, man, and that was something I mentioned, and I really didn't think Gregor would get caught with that. And it was so shocking, right? Who wasn't shocked with that? His neck, man, I don't know what to say. His neck nearly got snapped. Like, Kevin Lee, he didn't want to grapple, man. He didn't want to grapple. He proved a lot to the MMA community. He proved a lot to himself, his coaches, everything, man. Gregor Gillespie, spare a thought. Spare a thought for that guy, because that's not any TKO. That's a serious, serious knockout. Derek Lewis and Blagoy. Now, Derek Lewis, man, I'll be honest, boys. I'm always going to be honest here. I took him, and if anybody is there saying they think Blagoy won that fight, I wouldn't disagree with you. I really wouldn't disagree with you. Now, the only thing that saved Derek Lewis in that fight is everything he landed was significant. So he wasn't as technical. He probably wasn't better than Blagoy on the night. But every time he exploded, these 4, 5, 6 significant strikes add up each explosion. And eventually you get to the end of the fight and you think there was quite a few times that Derek Lewis exploded and landed some nasty shots, but every single moment in between these explosions, Blagoy was winning. So one of those fights, man, that could have gone either way, you know. I felt Blagoy edged it 29-28, and like I said, I was on Lewis, but very close, man, very close. Thompson and Luque, I love that. I love that fight. And when I really looked into breaking down that fight, there was something I noticed with these guys. Whoever gets into their rhythm first will start to add to their game. So when Wonderboy got into the kicking rhythm, now you see these hands that he's landing. The hands he's landing look great. Luque came out and didn't get into his punching rhythm. He came out and started with the low calf kick. Now, I felt that would have been, that would have been more effective if he came out, got Wonder Boy's respect with his hands, and then started to add the calf kick. Now, a few calf kicks did land early doors, right? A few calf kicks did, but if he did it the other way around, I felt he would have had more success. But it was evident in round 2, when it got to round 2, that Thompson was the one dictating that fight. He got into his rhythm quicker, and that's why he was able to start landing these good 1-2s up top. Darren Till and Calvin Gastelum, man, I'm not scared of nobody. I'm not scared of fighting nobody. I want to fight the best. I'm here to fight the best. Darren Till, let's go. He came out, man. Calm, composed, intelligent, looking to clinch up a lot. That was, man, I really didn't think Darren could do that. I said Calvin Gastelum wouldn't take him down. I felt Darren was too big to be taken down, but to see Darren initiate the clinch, man, his game plan was spot on, boys. It was spot on. It was a very close fight. I'll be completely honest, the judge who scored it 30-27 for Calvin, you should be sacked. You should have been sacked today on Monday morning. That was outrageous. But yeah, I'm buzzing. Listen, I'm not... I know a lot of you disagreed with me, but this is just the fight game we have. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose making a prediction, you know? Calvin Gastelum, I'm not going to sit here and say he's not a beast now, that I was right. That guy is a killer. And to see Darren Till clinch up with him, and he's never done that in a fight, that explains how good and how dangerous Calvin Gastelum really is. The main event, what can we say, boys? We was all loving it. Well, not arguably, very evident. 3-0 to Jorge Masvidal going into the 4th before it got stopped. What can I say about it, man? Nate Diaz proves again he's tough as nails. Jorge Masvidal proves again he's here to baptize people. He's very close to baptizing Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is just a gangster. For the 4th and 5th round, we're gonna, those are the rounds that Nate likes to participate in. But man, what can you say? The doctor, he stopped the fight. I've seen cuts worse. You've seen cuts worse. When you look at the doctor rules for stopping fights, does it kind of fit into his rules of stopping a fight? Probably. But we've seen things way worse, right? We've seen things so much worse than that. It's sad that the night will be remembered for that, when in reality the night was just amazing from start to finish. So yeah, let's get into this Russia card, boys. So just quickly before I start, this is a Russia card, so if you hear the word Sambo repeated more than 50 times, don't be alarmed. So this is the first fight of the night. We have Jessica Rose, Jess Clark versus Pani Banzai Kianzad. We'll start here with Jessica. She comes into this fight 2 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler. She's a good wrestler. Also, I'd say also a fairly underrated BJJ player. She has got that 10th planet jiu-jitsu. Fairly decent power in her hands. But I'd say she's most dangerous when she's able to bully her opponent and look to grapple with her opponent often. She'll also be stepping back up to 135 here. She has been competing at 125 in the UFC, but this will be her first fight at bantamweight. And her opponent, Pani Banzai Kianzad, she comes into this fight 0 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Her debut was against a girl who, we kind of respect quite a bit now. Macy Chiasson, she's a very big girl, naturally a 145er. So that's a tough debut. And then she fought Julia Avila, who, that girl, she looked really good in that fight. That was a kind of close fight, but Julia Avila was just landing these cleaner, more significant strikes. The strikes that made you go, oh, just quite a bit more than Pani. So Pani is a former Cage Warriors champion. She started training in MMA and boxing at around 14 years old. She's fought against good competition pretty much her whole career. And I think she's a good fighter, man. You know, it hasn't happened inside the octagon for her in her 2 fights as of yet. You know, on the bigger stage, it doesn't seem to be happening. But overall, when you look at her overall abilities to fight, I think she deserves to be here still. You know, she's a well-rounded girl. She's been doing this for quite a few years. And I would say this is probably her best matchup yet. For those of you who don't know, this will be a rematch. Both girls have fought against each other. And Pani won that fight back in the day. Seeing as Jessica's stepping back up to 120, stepping up to 135 from 25, I don't think she's going to have the grappling advantage, that bully mentality. I don't think she's going to have that here. Now, if you go and watch their first fight, it is very evident that Jessica Rose Clark is the stronger fighter. If you put both of these girls in a body lock and say fight, pretty much 7 or 8 times out of 10, I'd say Jessica Rose Clark is able to get the fight to the mat and secure a takedown. She is the stronger fighter. However, I do think Pani will be able to compete in the clinch up against the fence. And the more Pani can make this a kickboxing match, I think it'll become clearer and clearer who's winning this fight. So I'm going to go with the striking here. I think Pani is a much better striker. Like I said, she's 0-2, so it's a little bit rich praising her striking ability. She's not done too good inside the UFC as of yet, but she does have a matchup that she's already won. So if she can keep it kickboxing, I think she can score often there. So I'll take Pani Kianzad via decision. And we take a look at the odds. Very close. Very, very close odds. -105 each, -110 each. Jessica Rose Clark actually now turning an underdog. You could have got Pani Kianzad at +120. So quite a few people have jumped on that, and you know, fair play to that, because I would have. I did see it a few days ago, but the 244 card wasn't even, you know, at the door yet, so I wasn't looking to invest in the next card. But yeah, I agree with those odds. It's a very close fight, and yeah, either side is a good bet, but I'm going to lean on Pani Kianzad via decision. Moving on into the next one, we have Alexander Thunder of the North Yakovlev versus Roosevelt Go-Getter Roberts. This is a good matchup, man. I like this matchup. Originally, my boy Vince Pichel was supposed to fly over to Russia and fight Yakovlev, but he got injured. So the guy that Vince Pichel beat most recently, gave him his first loss, Roosevelt Roberts, he'll be stepping in to fight Yakovlev. So we'll start with Yakovlev. He comes into this fight 3 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. This guy is a master of sports in hand-to-hand combat. So if you don't know what that is, go check out hand-to-hand combat. Quite a few militaries use that kind of stuff too, so it's pretty cool to watch on. He's also a master of sports in Sambo, and he's a master of sports in freestyle wrestling. So this master of sports thing, for anybody that doesn't know, it's like the old school Soviet Union way of saying you're very good at what you do. Maybe a little bit wrong on that, but I believe it has something to do with the Soviet Union, something like that. But yeah, to summarize what I'm saying, Alexander Yakovlev, it's very evident to see this guy's looking to grapple, right? Used to be a welterweight, and he was able to roll on the mat with Damian Maia. I believe that went the distance as well, quite a few years back, but if I remember rightly, Yakovlev proved a lot in that fight. He was able to roll on the mat with Damian Maia and keep it very competitive. So he's now at lightweight. He's moved down to 155. Had that fight with Alex de Silva back a few months ago, where you know he was basically beaten with calf kicks and speed in the first round, and in the second round he was able to. I believe Alex de Silva actually calf kicked him to the mat within the first 2 seconds of the second round, and then jumped on top of him for some reason. I don't know why. But Yakovlev was able to find a submission. Like I said, this guy's credentials with the grappling, you know, we assume that all these Russians are just great grapplers, and some of them are just so much better than the other Russians. But this guy, like I said, master of sports in Sambo, master of sports in hand-to-hand combat and freestyle wrestling. So this guy is looking to grapple in there. He's very tall, very skinny, very rangy at 155. So Roosevelt Go-Getter Roberts comes into this fight 2 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. And this guy had a very, very tough upbringing. He used to sell drugs, steal stuff to support himself as a teenager. And now he's in the biggest MMA organization in the world. So, yeah, once again, my hat is off to people like this. You know, Alex White, Ashley Yoder. We may not respect some of these people, but we have to acknowledge the upbringing they've had. Just amazing to see he's in the biggest MMA organization in the world now with that start to life. So yeah, I really like this guy. I'll be honest, man. I really like him as a kickboxer. I did take Vince Pichel to beat him. And that's like the only time this guy's really looked like he struggled inside the octagon. You know, Vince has a lot of experience. So does Yakovlev, to be honest. But this guy, man, he's really composed. He's a composed guy on the feet. He's also tall and long, just like Yakovlev. And to be honest, man, he's been surprising a few guys with his jiu-jitsu. Like even the Spider-Man choke up against the fence with Horcha, I believe it was. So it's pretty clear to see Yakovlev is way more experienced than Roosevelt Roberts. Stylistically, though, I do like this fight for both guys. I think Yakovlev will initiate any body-to-body contact he can get and search for a submission, especially in the second and third round, especially if Roosevelt Roberts does slow down, which he did against a very experienced guy, like I said, Vince Pichel. You know, that was the first bit of adversity he fought against and learnt a tough lesson that night. So if he does slow down, I think that's a good path for Yakovlev. But if this fight was just kept kickboxing, I think Roberts would beat Yakovlev up. Like I said, man, Roberts has shown good jiu-jitsu in his UFC career already. He's a purple belt in BJJ. But styles make fights, right? Styles make fights. And if Roberts looks to grapple with this guy, I think we may see the Russian pull it off, because this guy is no joke when it comes to grappling. Like I said, man, this guy survived and competed, right? Didn't just survive, actively enjoyed his time on the mat with Damian Maia at 170. So, yeah, Roosevelt Roberts, if you're listening, please keep this kickboxing. And please show me improved conditioning. So a little bit of a faith pick. But I like this kid, man. I really like him. So I'm going to take Roosevelt Roberts via decision. And we look at the odds. Where are the odds? I can never find the odds. Here we go. Plus 140. Plus 145. Plus 148. Ooh, it's not too bad for Yakovlev. So if you're favouring the experience, man, I think it's a good line. If you're favouring the youth, if you feel this Roberts can show us improvements in his conditioning, yeah, I think that's not the worst line either. It's getting a little bit deep in some areas, like minus 172, minus 175, but in some areas for Roberts is minus 160. So yeah, the line I think is playable either side. But personally, I'm going to stick with the youth here. I'm going to take Roosevelt Roberts via decision. Okay, third fight of the night. We have Abubakar Nurmagomedov versus David Zawada. We'll start with Nurmagomedov first. So this guy's making his UFC debut, training out of Team AKA. For those of you who don't know, he is the cousin of Khabib Nurmagomedov. I believe Abubakar was actually one of the guys who jumped into the cage to attack Conor, for anybody that doesn't know. Obviously, don't let that play into your picks. But I believe he was one of those guys. Obviously, Abubakar, he's not on the level of Khabib, but he is the cousin and he has trained with Khabib for a long time. So there's no doubt this guy's a Sambo champion too, right? He's obviously a national combat Sambo champion in Russia, so very high level. I've seen this guy fight in PFL a couple times. He doesn't look the greatest, but when the opponent is so scared to grapple, that's what keeps this guy into close fights. You know, he kind of comes forward. He's never the one backing up, because if you back him up, he's gonna shoot for a takedown. So he comes forward and he's able to just kind of dictate the fight. And if he does get a hold of you, if there is grappling, you will see it. You will see that Khabib-like mentality. You will see, putting the wrist behind the back, holding onto the wrist, clamping up the legs, looking to take the back, looking to flatten you out, pull the legs out from the cage. You're going to see all of that stuff with this guy. His opponent, David Zawada, comes into this fight 0-2 inside the UFC. I believe I was actually in Germany. Well, I was in Germany at his debut against Danny Roberts. I can't remember if it was his debut or his last fight, but I'm assuming it was his debut. And that was a really fun fight. Like, him and Danny Roberts just went to Scramble City. Literally just kept grappling, reversal. Really, really fun fight to watch. So, yeah, David Zawada. He is a ISKA kickboxing champion. So, if these two guys got in the octagon and it was just kickboxing, it's very evident who would dominate this fight. And David, like I said, man, he's a good grappler in his own right. Like that fight against Danny Roberts, just a pure 15-minute grapple fest. And it sounds boring, man, but for those who didn't see it, if you didn't see that fight, it was really entertaining. Like, I believe it got fight of the night as well. So, yeah, really good grappling contest in his debut. And yeah, like I say, man, both guys have their path. David Zawada is a kickboxing champion. If he keeps this kickboxing, if he can stuff takedowns, if he can move well, if he's conditioned good for 15 minutes, then he can win this fight. But if there is grappling for 3-4 minutes of any round, I think one guy is going to become quite tired quicker than the other guy. So, yeah, I can't go against Khabib's cousin in Russia, man. Like I say, if you're favouring the kickboxing and you think he can just put down this fake Khabib, that some people may say, that's fair enough too. There is definitely a path here for both guys. And Abubakar is not on the level of Khabib. So if you're taking David, that's a fair pick. But I'm going to take Abubakar here. I think the takedown is going to keep David on the back foot, and that's going to make it a close fight. And then when Abubakar is able to get the takedowns, that's going to score for him. So, yeah, I'll take Abubakar via decision. So, we take a look at the odds in that fight. Very heavy odds, man. Minus 280, minus 260, 270 for Nurmagomedov, and plus 230, plus 240, 220 for David. So, when I see that line, I initially think straight away a large percentage of the betting community feel this will be a grappling match, and the kickboxing champion isn't going to keep it kickboxing. I don't know. I really don't know. So, yeah, my best bit of advice would be, if you're taking Abubakar, maybe just once. If you're taking David, you only have to do it once with those odds too. So, fair play on either side, but it's a little bit too deep for me with Nurmagomedov. So, yeah, just one parlay there. Moving on into the next one, we have Grigory Popov versus an English guy, Davy Dangerous Grant. We'll start with the Russian. Popov comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. He's training out of Tiger Muay Thai. This guy has multiple titles in Muay Thai. He's a very, very tough guy. And you saw that. You saw that in his tough debut, man, against, I believe it was Eddie Wineland. I'm very sure it was Eddie Wineland. Grigori, he took some shots. He took some hard shots in that fight. And there was no quit in that guy. There was absolutely no quit until the moment he was forced to quit. And I really, really liked that. Ultimately, that fight summed up for Popov would be, he was just taught a lesson by a tough veteran of the game. I did notice Popov does like to switch stances quite a bit. So if he can just be a little bit more confident in this fight, not kind of impress me on his toughness, more his Muay Thai, I'd appreciate that. But man, even if this guy is in a similar type of fight where he's eating big shots, I think he has proven in his debut he isn't just going to go down. This guy is tough as nails. His opponent, Davy Grant, comes into this fight 1 win, 3 losses inside the UFC. Training out of SBG Manchester. And this guy is primarily a kickboxer inside the octagon. He is a purple belt in BJJ. Had that 1.5 year layoff. Came back and fought Manny Bermudez, which that fight was in Germany. I saw that fight live too. And Manny just starched him. Just pure starched him. Put him in a triangle. Choked him out and just let his head drop on the canvas after. It was nasty. But Davy Grant, man, like if you look at his performance against Marlon Vera, that's his only win. Like, this guy has got a skill set. Like, this guy, when he can put it all together, he can notch up some good wins. But that 1.5 year layoff, and I've seen him say a few times that he doesn't really like to fight. He's not a fighter, but he has the skill set. He definitely has the skill set. So this is a very, very tough match. Very, very tough fight to predict. I do like both guys in this fight. I wish I could pick both. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But whatever way you look at it, man, I think Grant can perform well. I think Popov can perform well. I feel like this is one of those fights whoever turns up on the night is going to get their hand raised. Is it going to be Popov turning up with Muay Thai? Or is it going to be Davy Grant turning up and making everyone see, look how tough Popov is. Look at his face. I'm really landing here, right? So this is one, boys, that no matter what side you pick, do not bet this hard. That's my best advice I could give you on this one. But I am going to take the Russian. I really like his heart and determination. So that's maybe what I'm going to decide here. I feel his hunger, his heart, his drive is maybe what stands out against Davy Grant. Where Davy Grant, like I said, doesn't really like to fight. How hungry is this guy? And if Manny Bermudez is able to start you, I don't know how hungry you are. So, yeah, I'm going to take Grigori Popov via decision. Moving on into the odds for that fight. We have plus 160, plus 170, plus 175. Davy Grant, minus 190, minus 180, minus 200. Man, it's a little deep on Popov. I'm not going to lie. It's a little deep. If you like Davy Grant, the odds are definitely there. It's way closer than that, I feel. But I'm not just going to bet on Davy Grant because his odds are good and it's a close fight in my head and on paper. So I'm still going to stick with Grigori Popov, but I'm only going to put him in like one, maybe two parlays at the most. Moving on into the next one, we have Roman Kopylov versus Carl Baby K Roberson. We'll start with Roman. This guy is 8-0 as a pro. Obviously another Sambo champion. He's won multiple titles in combat Sambo in Russia and other parts of Europe. This guy is also 5-time world hand-to-hand champion. His hands look very good in the tape I've seen up close with his opponents. He is very quick, with his hand movement. So that's something I really noticed with this guy. Obviously, he's looking to implement his sambo in his fights. He's looking to grapple. But like I say, man, 5-time hand-to-hand world champion. That's no joke. Up close, this guy is going to be sneaky quick and powerful with his hands. But he, the path to victory here for Roman really should be to look to grapple Carl Roberson. So his opponent, Carl, comes into this fight 3 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. This guy is primarily just a kickboxer. He slows down quite a bit in some of his fights due to the grappling. But if you give this guy space, man, if there's space and not a lot of grappling, this guy really does show us like he isn't a bad kickboxer at all. For some reason, in his last fight, he actually initiated the clinch a few times with Wellington Turman, and that was a very close fight. That was I have a strong argument for the Brazilian Nick Diaz. I have a strong argument that Wellington won that fight, but at the same time, man, a lot of positional domination from Wellington in the clinch, but when Carl Roberson was able to reverse the position, just the attempted strikes was maybe what influenced the judges on that night. But this is a pretty black and white fight to me. This is if Roman wants to win this fight, he has to implement his grappling. He has to look to grapple, because I think if it's just kickboxing, I would say it would be a closer fight, just kickboxing, than it would if it was just grappling. I think if it's just grappling, I think Roman dominates. Kickboxing, I'd probably give the edge to Carl Roberson, because that's naturally what he is. But at the same time, man, like I said, this guy is Roman's 5-time hand-to-hand world champion. Like anything up close, and it's not in the clinch, I think Roman can really score some significant strikes too. Carl Roberson likes to use that low calf kick, really stamp his dominance in these kickboxing fights inside the octagon. So, it's pretty clear to see. If you want to beat Carl Roberson, you have to grapple. So yeah, that's what I think has to happen here. It's a very interesting fight. I think both guys have good hand speed, which also makes this fight interesting. If it ends up in the clinch or on the mat, I think, like I said, man, Roman is way more accomplished there. And Carl has struggled with that type of fight before. He got a win against Wellington and kind of struggled with the clinch a little bit. But, man, very tough pick to make. But once again, I'm sticking with the Russian here. I think the grappling may be the difference. And some people may not know that this Roman guy, hand-to-hand, up close, he really isn't bad. So I think he's going to hold himself with the striking too. So I'm going to take Roman Kopylov via decision. And we move on into the odds for this fight. And very close odds. Very close odds. We have plus 100 for Carl Roberson, minus 120 for Roman. And those odds are very close, man. Very close. And I can see why, because Carl Roberson, decent kickboxer. For those who can go back and watch his tape, man, he is no joke when it comes to kickboxing. Just guys are able to get in close fights and beat him when they can slow down the kickboxing, look to grapple, look to work up against the fence. So yeah, very close odds. A lot of people are seeing that a real close one, and I wouldn't disagree, but I'm going to stick with Roman Kopylov here at minus 120. Moving on into the next one, and this, I really, really like this fight. It's Rustam Khabilov versus Sergey Honda Khandozhko. We'll start with Rustam. Comes into this fight 9 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC, so fairly decent UFC record. And there was no doubt, of course, this guy is a Sambo specialist. He's won multiple championships in combat Sambo, absolutely no doubt there, of course. Has very low output when he's striking on the feet. Very defensive. You know, when he's going toe to toe with his opponent inside the octagon, with no body to body contact, Rustam Khabilov is very wary and defensive on the feet. Now, does it surprise us that he can't and doesn't really score on the feet? No, it doesn't. He's a sambo specialist. He's waiting for the right time to shoot a single, shoot a double, or even look to put his opponent up against the fence. His opponent, Sergei Khandozhko, comes into this fight 1 win, 0 losses inside the UFC. This guy is primarily a Muay Thai fighter. You know, in his debut, it was decent. You know, he was just circling on the outside, just looking to be the counter guy, avoiding those big shots from Ackman. And, you know, he waits so long to fire a big shot and then he'll wait so long again. Fairly favourable matchup in his debut. So this is a really interesting fight. I think this is a really interesting one. It's Russia versus Russia, which we don't obviously see that too often. It's very obvious to see that Sergei is the better striker here, but it's also evident that Rustam only really loses to pressure strikers, right? So Rustam against Cajun Johnson. I took Rustam, and I'll be honest, guys, I really felt Cajun Johnson won that fight. His game plan looked great. He circled the octagon beautifully, implemented some kicks from a distance, and his takedown defense was really good in that fight. And I was so surprised Rustam got that decision. So now you look at his other loss, right? A third-degree black belt, Diego Ferreira, the ever-improving Diego Ferreira. Now, if you're a third-degree black belt, you ain't scared of a takedown, so he was able to be the aggressor. So I'm looking at this fight here, a guy who is clearly a better striker and a guy who is a better grappler, right? The way I'm looking at this fight is, can Khandozhko be the aggressor? So from the debut and other fights, I see this guy more of a counter striker. So my next question would be, can he time Rustam with a perfectly timed elbow, uppercut, knee, or something like that? Maybe he can. But history shows us Rustam does not do well against guys who are not scared to be taken down, who can come forward, or guys who can go 15 minutes on their bike on the outside. I don't think, I'll be honest, man, I don't think Khandozhko is either of those guys. I don't think he showed us 15 minutes of excellent movement in his debut, and I think he proved to us that he is the aggressor, not the counter fighter. So I think Rustam is going to have the space behind him inside the octagon, and I think he's going to be able to dictate where this fight goes. Shoot a single and a double up against the fence. Khandozhko needs to be the aggressor, I feel. But I'm going to stick with Rustam Khabilov, and I'm going to take him. I'm going to take another decision. So Rustam Khabilov via decision. We take a look at those odds if I can find them. Can I find them? Yes, I can. Rustam Khabilov minus 160, minus 175, minus 180, minus 200. Yeah, I'm not sure what we're doing there, boys. We have complete split prices across the board. So, wow, that's an interesting one. Khandozhko plus 140, plus 150, plus 135, plus... Yeah, this line is... No one really knows. We get a little bit confused with the Russian versus Russian. Yeah, I like both lines. I think Rustam's line is probably going to turn too much. So if you like him, get it on now. Wait, where is he minus 200? Oh, of course. Of course. His heaviest price would be at my bookie at William Hill. Of course. Yeah, I'm going to stick, though, with Rustam Khabilov. Another really decent fight. Magomed Ankalaev versus Dolce champion Lungiambula? Something like that. I'm going to call you Dolce, like I did before. We'll start with the Russian Magomed. Comes into this fight 2 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Should be 3-0. But you know, Paul Craig with the last second of the 3rd round triangle choke, the Hail Mary choke. Oh man, that made me gassed. I even had money on Magomed, but you have to respect great moments. literally. If you love the sport, just sometimes you have to go. I don't care about the bet. That was amazing. That was dope. So yeah, of course he's a champion in combat sambo. Fedor Emelianenko actually awarded him his master in sports for sambo. For anyone that doesn't know, so once again, man, this guy is extremely high level with the sambo. On the feet, he's very calm. I see a lot of calmness in this guy on the feet. You know, his pressure coming forward, it is so calm. He is so calm. It's like the slightest of movement in any part of his body just kind of throws the opponent off. It can be a little shimmy of the hips or a little moving of the hands. Like his calm, collected demeanor makes his feints quite deadly. And you see that with the head kick finish against Pacino, man. Like, this guy is so calm and collected, man. The feints are really hard to read, and I hope soon we start to speak about this guy more with that kind of stuff, because I've really noticed that in his game. Like, his composure on the feet, it makes his feints all the more dangerous. His opponent, Dolce, this guy is athletic beast. Literally, he comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. His debut was against Daquan Townsend. He looked fairly good in that fight. Dolce did, you know. He has that judo background, very, very explosive. You could basically say this guy's like the off-brand Romero. And I say off-brand because we have to respect Romero's name. We can't say this is the new Romero. We have to say off-brand. So yeah, Dolce, man, he's explosive. He hits very, very hard. Is there much technique with this guy on the feet? Not really. This guy is about catching you clean, and if he catches you clean, there's no other way. You're going down. This guy has insane power, very athletic. With the clinch, man, like I said, the judo background, this guy will toss you in the air and look to get on you and land heavy ground and pound. Very good fight to look at, man. So one thing I noticed looking back at Dolce's debut, and I probably didn't notice it at the time because this guy is, you know, he's got these big muscles, man. He's explosive. He does look big, but one thing I noticed is he's actually quite undersized for light heavyweight. Like, he's not tall. He's not a tall, long guy for light heavyweight. You know, you compare his frame against John Jones. There is so much more height and reach on John Jones, and then you look at the technique difference. You know, so now I start to see the problems that Dolce will have. The problems that he's going to have is when he's fighting a guy who's more technical in the striking area, and they're longer, taller, and can move well. That's where I see problems for Dolce. And I think that could be the same again here. Obviously, in the debut, he didn't experience that. Daquan was able to implement a nice jab from a distance, but overall, Daquan was too flat-footed, didn't have the best movement, didn't move enough to kind of stop Dolce from landing that power shot, landing that power double. And Magomed, you know, is completely different. This guy is very calm on the feet. But he's intelligent too. He's gonna move. He's gonna stick a jab. He's gonna throw high kicks, body kicks, and he's gonna make Dolce. He's gonna make Dolce see these feints. So as long as Magomed doesn't get caught with a big bomb, which, you know, if Magomed has proven MMA to be the amazing sport it is with the 1 second to go loss, without a doubt, Dolce only needs 1 second. It can be 14 minutes 59 in round 3. And Dolce can win with one shot. We've seen it with Derek Lewis too. It can happen. So at any moment, Dolce could be losing, and there it is. There's the win. So very dangerous fight to bet on. But once again, man, I'm going to stick with the more technical, cool, calm, composed guy here. I'm going to take the Russian. And once again, I'm going to take a decision. So I'll take Magomed Ankalaev via decision. And we take a look at the odds, and personally, I think these odds are way too insane for what could happen in this fight. Minus 300, minus 290 for Magomed, and plus 250, plus 260 for Dolce. So, like I say, boys, if you're gonna look at this fight on paper for technique, range, length, experience, all of these credentials, you're gonna have a strong winner, and you probably could go, well, that guy should be minus 300. But at the end of the day, the human skull, if it takes a big bomb, there's nothing you can do. You know, you're gonna go to sleep. Not everyone's like Nate Diaz, and I don't think Magomed is like Nate Diaz. You know, if Dolce puts one on his chin, and you get that click of the jaw where it clicks back, and then boom, the lights are done. You'll be waking up in a few seconds. If that happens, plus 260 was a great bet. Like I said, I'm not going to bet on Dolce just because of his price, but I probably will fade Magomed at minus 3. But I will make a pick, and it is going to be Magomed. So yeah, obviously don't go too crazy on that one. And if you're on Dolce, you don't need to go too crazy, because look at those odds, they're insane. Alright guys, moving on into the next one, and I'm going to take a 5-minute smoke break after I break down this fight. So let's get into this one. We have Tony Rocco Martin versus Ramazan Emeev. We'll start with Tony. He comes into this fight 8 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's training out of ATT. He's a former lightweight who stepped up to 170 a year and a half ago, and he's 4-1 at welterweight, only losing to Damian Maia. Tony Martin is primarily a grappler, a good wrestler, but his jiu-jitsu is where he's very good. He's a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. His stand-up game very much evolved in mixed martial arts. You know, you see some of his wins recently against the Brazilian guy Moraes. The strong calf kick implemented, circling the octagon. Another one of his fights, Jake Matthews, even got the submission against Jake Matthews, which is very impressive. LaFleur, you know, high kick, TKO. I actually predicted that TKO for Tony Martin. So Tony Martin, man, he's moved up to 170, but he's looking very good here. Damian Maia was able to get the better of him. You know, Damian Maia's a god. Used good pressure coming forward, got the takedown, and Tony Martin was more accepting of the position not getting worse, rather than getting out of the position and risking it getting worse, and that's how he lost that fight. Obviously the third round, man, that was a close one. So Tony was really coming on strong in that fight, but Damian Maia is just a legend. Ramazan Emeev comes into this fight 3-0 inside the UFC, and the record continues. International Master of Sports in, guess what? Combat Sambo. They're everywhere on this card. Also has very good experience in freestyle wrestling. Started training in freestyle wrestling at like 6 years old. He's a former M1 middleweight champion. Very composed. And, you know, we was just speaking about Magomed Ankalaev. I literally feel like these two guys on the feet are very similar. Ramazan Emeev is very calm and composed on the feet, just like Magomed. You know what he's looking to do, and until he gets into that position, he's gonna come across very calm and collected, and every feint he's throwing is gonna mean a lot to the opponent. So I think this is a tough fight to predict, because I actually like both of these guys as grapplers. As grapplers, I think their involvement in striking is very impressive. Tony Martin is more jiu-jitsu orientated, like I said, and we know Emeev is more wrestling position based. You know, he's that type of guy. If we keep this fight on the feet, if it's kept on the feet, I think Tony Martin has to push a good pace. I think if both guys are trying to land on the feet, then it's going to be a very, very close fight, because, like I said, man, both guys primarily grapplers, and if you look at them purely as grapplers, man, and then you just look at the striking side of their game, you're impressed. That kind of stuff makes me fall in love with MMA even more when I see Tony Martin, ex-lightweight, black belt in jiu-jitsu. Look at his game. If he's not striking, he moves well. He implements a good game plan. And I think he has a tough fight on his hands, because Tony Martin does well when he's able to grapple, or he's not scared to grapple. And I think that is maybe the difference here. Maybe Ramazan Emeev is going to be, you know, just too willing to, look, I know you're a black belt, but I'll keep it here on the feet until it opens up, and then I'm going to shoot, and then you're going to be on your back working to either look for a sub or to looking to improve your position to get back to your feet. I think, man, as you can tell by the way I'm speaking about this one, it is close. In my imagination, this one is close. But I'm gonna stick with Ramazan Emeev. I think this guy, man, if it wasn't for his visa issues, I think a lot more people would know about this guy. So hopefully he's able to back me up here on Saturday. So I'll take, once again, I'm going to take a decision, because I'm not too confident picking finishes on this card. I'll take Ramazan Emeev via decision. And we take a look at the odds before we get into the smoke break. Ramazan Emeev -150, -160. Tony Martin +130, +140. Listen, I'll leave it at this. That is a completely fine line with me. I think Tony Martin, it would be a good underdog bet, because I think they both mirror each other in similar ways. But I think Ramazan Emeev, if you like him, that is not the worst favourite price you could get. So, yeah, I really like that, boys. That's a tough one to predict. If you have any strong feelings on that one, please leave a comment, because that is a tough one. Alright, boys, for those of you who smoke, if you weren't smoking, now's the time. Let's go. One thing I forgot to mention at the start of my breakdown of this card, I want to give a huge shout out to a guy who has been a part of my MMA betting group for quite a few months now, and I've seen massive progression in this guy's game betting wise. You know, passion wise for the sport, 10 out of 10. This guy's passion can't get any higher, but his IQ, his betting, it has improved so much. I want to give a shout out to this guy. I'm not going to name him, obviously, but Dan the man, you got 12 out of 12 for UFC 244. And I want to say, bud, mate, you've impressed me so much. And just a massive shout out to you, mate, because I know you listen to these breakdowns as well. But at the end of the day, you always make your own decision. You understand that your own thinking is the way to go. And 12 out of 12. Massive credit to you, Dan. A few comments, just quickly, just while we spoke. The MMA casual. Throwing a like and comment in now, but we'll be saving this for my drive to work. Much appreciated. Man, I love that. I love that, man. If I can keep you entertained on the way to work, I don't know if you love what you do for a living. I'm assuming you do, but if I can make your day better on the way to work, I love that, mate. Obviously, drive safe. You know, don't get too invested in what I'm saying. You know, keep your eyes on the road and that, and keep your ears and your brain focused on the road. But, mate, I love that. I completely love that. Tyler Lee, content is A1, brother. Let's keep the grind going. That's what I'm saying, Tyler. That's what I'm saying. 2,000 subscribers now. Things are looking beautiful on this channel. Let me tell you, boys, I appreciate all of the support every single week. Week in, week out, I've had people with me for over a year, and you know who you are. I see you there every week. This guy said, what are your top 5 viewed countries? And here's the list, okay? I've got my USA brothers, yeah, my Americans. I love you guys. You know, I have a fiance who's American, so I love you guys. We've got the Canadians, who my fiance, who's American, says the Canadians are a myth. Apparently, you guys are not a myth. She has a strong thing with Canadians who drink milk out of a bag. But I tell her every time, listen, they don't drink milk out of a bag. They buy the milk in a bag. So, UK, you know, my brothers coming in third. We got the Australians in fourth. And look at this, boys. Massive shout out to my brothers in the Philippines, coming in clutch with the 5th most viewed country on my channel, which that's insane. Justin Ivestar. This is a guy who's been with me for a very long time. He's there every single week. And I appreciate your words every single week, Justin, man. I really appreciate your support every week, man. You've been with me for a very long time. Okay, here's another comment. This is a funny one. We have... this is another guy, man. Week in, week out, this guy's with me. Dream Team MMA. I believe this guy's Dutch. Tony Ferguson's the type of guy to drug test USADA. Do you know what? I actually went back and forth with a couple of my mates on fight night. We were spending like a good strong 10 minutes, like in between fights, just coming up with loads of Tony Ferguson's the type of guy. One of the funniest ones we come out with is Tony Ferguson's the type of guy to armbar Herb Dean, where he lifts his arm up after he won. Here we go. I am a stoner, enjoying a smoke, enjoying this breakdown. That's what I'm saying, boys. So on that note, continue your blunts. I am going to continue with this card. And when I looked into this next fight, I came very interested with the guy debuting. So this is Shamil Gamzatov versus Klidson, the Russian terror, Abreu. We'll start with Shamil. This guy I became very interested in. Training out of Russia top team. You know, just like the other Russians, this guy is an international master of sports in combat sambo. But what interested me, what made me realize that this guy was a little bit different, this guy is actually a Dagestan national kickboxing champion. So arguably one of the best kickboxers coming out of Russia, coming out of Dagestan. So, man, this guy's different, right? This guy has the grappling, and this guy is not afraid to keep it kickboxing. This guy is, from the tape I've seen, I really like this guy's kickboxing ability. And then, you know, when it hits the clinch, he has that sambo. And then when it hits the mat, this guy is a brown belt in BJJ. So what I'm seeing with this guy is not just a Russian who's like the others with the grappling. This guy is extremely well-rounded. Has starching power in his hands too. I really like the look of this guy. And I'm not going to lie, man, boys. You can tell by the way I'm speaking now. I'm going to pick this guy. I'm going to be sad if he loses, because this guy on paper, I'm really impressed. His opponent, Klidson Abreu, comes into this fight 1-1 inside the UFC. Primarily a BJJ practitioner, started training in BJJ at 4 years old, ended up a BJJ champion, transitioned into MMA roughly 10 years ago, and he's actually stepping down from 205 to 185 in this fight. So that's maybe a little bit strange, but maybe the right move for him, I don't know. In his short notice debut against a guy we've seen, a guy who's on this card, Magomed Ankalaev, he showed real heart in that fight. I believe his nose got broken badly at one point, and there was no quit in this guy. No quit whatsoever. In his last fight against Sam Alvey, very composed, didn't load up on any shots, took his time, you know, really measuring Sam Alvey with some distance, landing some good calf kicks. The fight was quite inactive for both guys, but the composure is something that I liked in Klidson's game. So, like I said earlier, boys, you know who I'm going to pick on this one. I'm really excited with this Russian guy. I think he's extremely well-rounded. Obviously, these credentials, we see him on paper, and sometimes we don't see him inside the octagon. So, for an example, we know Justin Gaethje is a very good wrestler, but do we ever see it? No, we don't. But I think if this guy can put it all together, if this Shamil Gamzatov guy can put it all together inside the octagon, I think he could. This guy is a potential champion. That's what I see. So yeah, man, like I said, this guy's really well-rounded. He's a kickboxing champion, Sambo international champion. I really like him, man. I don't see a way he loses this fight. Maybe he just gets caught. You know, everyone has a very good chance inside the octagon, especially a puncher's chance. But for the most part, man, this Russian here is the guy I'm looking forward to seeing the most on this card. So I'm actually going to take a finish this time. I'm going to take Shamil Gamzatov to get a TKO in round... Actually, no, I'm going to take a submission. I think he's going to look really good on the feet, show us he's a good kickboxer, but I think he's going to get a submission in round number 2. And we take a look at the odds. Where are these odds? Come on, where are they? Here they are. Minus 200 for Gamzatov. Minus 200. Plus 170, plus 180 for Klidson. Now, for this one, I can't really say it's too deep for Shamil. I've hyped him up a little bit. I really like the look of this guy. So, for anyone who wants to put him in a couple, I wouldn't argue against it. On the other side, Klidson Abreu has had a couple fights inside the UFC. He is stepping down from 205. So maybe he has a power advantage in this fight. And the odds are obviously there if you want to bet on Klidson. But personally, I'm going to stick with Shamil. Okay, Ed Short Fuse Herman versus Hadis Ibragimov. Hadis Ibragimov, yes. We'll start with Ed. Comes into this fight 11 wins, 11 losses inside the UFC. Training out of Team Quest, which is a decent camp. This will be his 38th pro fight. A true veteran of the sport. A very well-rounded guy. A black belt in BJJ. A lifelong wrestler. And a very experienced striker at this point. The problem is, he's out of his prime. He's got a lot of fight hours on his clock. His opponent, Hadis Ibragimov, comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. A former M1 205 champion. And I don't even need to say it at this point. You guys already know he's a multiple-time Sambo champion. Actually, he's a Sambo champion on the Russia scene, European scene, and the Universal scene. So I feel like every guy has different credentials with these Sambo accomplishments. Like they're all slightly different. Like I said earlier, Fedor Emelianenko awarded Magomed with that, and this guy's doing it on different levels. You know, Russia, Europe, Universal. It's crazy. It is crazy. So I'll start by saying I didn't take Hadis in his debut. It was a very short notice fight. Replacement for Jung, and Jung was like a plus 250 underdog. And one of the reasons why I didn't take Ibragimov is because he is still quite fresh in MMA. This guy's only been training in MMA for roughly 3 years. His striking is quite wild. There's not too much technique with it, other than it's quick and powerful. I feel like Ed Herman does have all the experience on his side here. He does have the know-how to win this fight. And what I feel when I imagine this fight is I think somebody's going to get slept. Somebody's getting slept in the first round. Ed Herman, you look at his last few fights, and Ed Herman has been fighting at 205 now for a few fights. So, you know, for those of you who don't remember, Ed primarily spent his career at middleweight. And this guy, Ed Herman, is just going to try to beat you to the punch and add another 2 punches in there, or he's going to look to counter you with 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's what he did against Pat Cummins, and that's what he's basically been doing for his last few fights. Now, the last time I saw him fight somebody who's not from his era, which that would be Nikita Krylov, and he got head kicked and it was horrible. Ibragimov is not from Ed's era. He is much younger. So this is strictly an experienced veteran out of his prime against a guy who, you know, has so much potential. Like the ceiling is his potential. We don't know how good he's gonna be, but he's gonna learn along the way. Maybe this is a fight that he does learn in. I don't know. But all I really see in this fight is Ibragimov is gonna throw those wild, loose, powerful strikes, and Ed Herman's gonna beat him to the punch, or he's gonna counter him. I don't really see much other than someone's gonna get hurt in the first round. I'm not too confident in either pick, to be honest. If I pick Ibragimov, I definitely feel Ed can use that experience and get a TKO. And if I pick Ed, I think the youth and potential of the Russian could also be the factor. So really tough one. I think one of the best bets on this particular fight would be fight not to go the distance. It's a really tough one, man, but I like the Russians on this card. I'm going to stick with the Russian. Like I said, he is pretty new to MMA, but when you look at what he's done prior to the UFC, once again, we see a paper, a list full of credentials that looks pretty good for this guy. So I'm going to take this guy. Hopefully he's improved his technique with his strikes. So I'll take Hadis Ibragimov via TKO in round number 1. And we take a look at the odds. Where are they? Minus 180, minus 190, minus 200 for Hadis. Plus 160, plus 165 for Herman. So, yeah, man, I agree with it. I feel it probably should be favoured towards the youth. But at the same time, Herman's not looking to win a point battle. He's looking to beat you to the punch. And then throw another couple punches in there to set you down, or he's looking to slip the punches and counter you. Either way, I think someone's going to get hurt in the first round, and I want to be on the Russian side here. Even if I'm wrong, it is what it is, but I'm going to stick with Hadis. Moving on into the next one, we have Salim Imadaev versus Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. We'll start with Salim. Comes into this fight 0-1 inside the UFC. There's a few Russians on this card who are 0-1, so this is going to be an interesting card. This guy was kicked out of Extreme Couture for hurting fighters in sparring. I don't know if anyone remembers that with the debut with Max Griffin, but he was kicked out of that camp. So you could say this is a bit of a nasty guy, and you can see that in his eye when he steps into the octagon. This guy was primarily a boxer before transitioning into MMA. Although now he's a very solid kickboxer. You know, he's proven to me and shown us he likes to spin with his kicks. He'll spin with the fist. As for a grappler, I don't think he's bad there. He was able to survive a few nasty neck cranks with Max Griffin. Chain wrestled a little bit. I wouldn't say that's his best aspect, but I wouldn't say he's terrible there. For a Russian, probably underachieving in the grappling, you could say, but Salim, primarily a boxer, transitioned into a kickboxer, just a nasty guy. There's been a few fights I've seen of his prior to the UFC where the ref is stopping the fight and he's thrown an extra 2 or 3 in there, and this guy's looking to hurt you. He doesn't care about anything else. This is a mean guy. He's fighting Danny Roberts, a guy who comes into this fight 5 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. He might be fighting for his job in this one. Probably not, but if he's finished quickly, then 5-5, 3 losses in a row, it's not looking good. Danny Roberts also primarily a boxer before transitioning into MMA. And it's interesting to see because when I look at this fight, before the UFC, before MMA, they're both boxers, right? But it's nice to see the evolving, right? So Salim, boxer, now kickboxer, likes to spin a lot. Danny Roberts, boxer, likes to implement his takedowns when he has the grappling advantage. So both guys have their backup tools. And like I said, both guys primarily boxers in there. So this is going to be, I think, striking-wise, I think this fight can get very interesting. It's a tough one, man, because Danny Roberts was completely put off by the the unorthodox style and the crazy movement of Michel Pereira. And I think with Salim, that crazy spinning attacks, that unorthodox style, that I don't really care what you have, I want to hurt you mentality, I don't think that's the best type of opponent to give Danny Roberts. And we've kind of seen that in a few of his fights. So really tough fight to predict. I wish I could take the Englishman, and if I'm wrong, then you know I'm still happy. He's an English guy. I like it. I like seeing English fighters in the UFC. One thing to mention, Danny Roberts does have a really good camp, you know, training with really good guys. One to mention would be Kamaru Usman. So yeah, the Henry Hoof camp, I really appreciate Henry Hoof as a coach. I think he's great. It's a tough one, man. It's a real tough one, and I'm going to have to stick with the Russian. I just think his involvement from boxing is a little bit more dangerous than Danny Roberts on the feet. But like I said, man, the counter-argument is Danny Roberts would prefer to grapple than spin. So both guys have their backups. I'm going to stick with the Russian again here. I think Danny Roberts could get hurt. So I'm going to take Zelim via TKO in round number 1. We take a look at the odds. Man, to be honest, it's a little bit deep for Zelim. -200, and we seem to be rising as well. -220. Danny Roberts, a lot of faith lost in Danny Roberts, man, and you can see it in his line. +180. Oh, man. I'm going to stick with Zelim, but at that price, 1 parlay, maybe 2 if I get crazy with it. Okay, moving on into the co-main event, we have Alexander Volkov versus Greg Hardy, and we'll start with Volkov. Comes into this fight 4 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Should be 5-0 inside the UFC if he wasn't TKO'd by Derek Lewis in the last 10 seconds. Volkov is a former Bellator fighter and an M1 fighter. This guy has a lot of great experience. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but primarily a kickboxer. And a very, very decent kickboxer for the heavyweight division. Good output, good technique with his strikes, very good on the outside. Volkov, man, he's a really good guy. A really good guy for the heavyweight division. Greg Hardy comes into this fight 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 no contest. Training out of ATT. A very controversial fighter. We saw him a few weeks ago fight Ben Sassoli, and for some reason he thought it would be a good idea to use his inhaler. Not sure why, but he did. But I don't want to speak about all of that kind of stuff. I want to speak about his fighting ability. I want to speak about the fight. And when we look at Greg Hardy, primarily just a power puncher, has stopping power in his hands. But in my opinion, I think he's very accurate with his power punches. I think he measures the range, and when he can see that strike, he 9 times out of 10, he really connects with that power. So some people see him as just this power puncher who, he's just power. But I see some precision in Greg Hardy's hands. Now we look at the evolving in his game, right? So look at that fight against Ben Sassoli. I know we're all talking about the inhaler, but let's just talk about the fight here. Greg Hardy understands that styles make fights. Greg Hardy said, do you know what, Ben Sassoli, you're a hard hitter, and I know you want to brawl with me. You'd love to make a name off of me, putting me down in a brawl. But you know what? Greg Hardy realized, listen, the smart way to go about this fight is I don't have to really trade with this guy too much. I can move. I have better movement than this guy. I'm in better shape. I can calf kick him. I can work on the outside, implement a jab. And that's what Greg Hardy done, man. He understands styles make fights, and he doesn't have to be this crazy, aggressive guy all the time. And, when you go back a minute ago to what I just said, he trains out of ATT. It's obvious that this guy is training around great people. Mike Brown with Masvidal and all these other great guys. He's a great coach. And I'm sure he has Greg Hardy on the right track. So I really like this matchup. On paper, I think it's very clear who wins. But fights don't always happen the way they should happen on paper. It only takes one bomb. It only takes one big bomb from Greg Hardy, and I think he's going to set Volkov down. Now, like I said, Greg understands, this is my opinion, I believe he understands styles make fights. If Greg Hardy looks to implement the same tactic that he did against Ben Sassoli, stay on the outside, calf kick, implement a jab, Greg Hardy is going to be brutally destroyed in this fight. Now, if Greg Hardy looks to back up Volkov, take away the space, and land power bombs, I think Greg Hardy has a great chance. I will say this, Greg Hardy is getting a lot of criticism, and I think that plays into the game plan that he needs to implement here. He needs to be aggressive, And I think if Greg Hardy is angry at the world, I think he's his most dangerous. So a little bit of a faith pick here, boys. I know most of you are going to disagree, but I'm going to take it. The way I saw Timothy Johnson and Derek Lewis connect, I think Greg Hardy can also connect. So I'm going to take Greg Hardy to make people angry. And if I'm wrong, do you know what? We probably saw Volkov destroy this guy. So either way, I feel good about this one. I think Greg Hardy can do it though. So I'm going to take Greg Hardy via TKO in round number 1. We take a look at the odds. I believe that's my first underdog on the card. Greg Hardy plus 230. Volkov minus 270. Which is insane. But like I said, man, if you look at it on paper and you pick based on what the paper says, you have a strong winner, which is Volkov. But I'm gonna give you my opinion, and I'm gonna take Greg. All right, boys, main event time. You know what it is. All right. We have Zabit Magomedsharipov versus Calvin Kattar. I'll start with Zabit. He comes into this fight undefeated. He's looking great in the UFC. For anyone who doesn't know this insane information about Zabit, let me be the first to tell you. He started training in freestyle wrestling and Sanda at 10 years old. Sanda is Chinese kickboxing, which is basically full body kickboxing. At 12 years old, Zabit was put into a boarding school for mixed martial arts. He stayed there for 11 years. From 12 years old until 23, he stayed in a mixed martial arts boarding school, and they trained 3 times a day. So, for anybody who doesn't really get this, like, let me try and tell you this. There is no hype train for this guy. Okay, if he loses this fight, it doesn't matter. If he loses the next fight, it doesn't matter. This guy spent 11 years inside a mixed martial arts boarding school, training 3 times a day. This guy was brought into the earth to be a trained killer. It doesn't matter if he loses this. There is no hype train stopped. This guy is extremely good, and no loss will take away this guy's credentials. This guy is great. So obviously, he's a trained killer. He's been in a boarding school for 11 years, training in freestyle wrestling, Sanda, which is Chinese kickboxing. He's obviously Russian, so he's trained in Sambo. He's just an extremely well-rounded mixed martial artist. That's what this guy is. That is what Zabit is. So please, if he loses, or when he does lose, please don't say the hype train is derailed. It's not meant for this guy. When you spend 11 years in boarding school, training 3 times a day, there's no train. There's just concrete evidence that this guy is great at what he does. And he's against a guy in Calvin Kattar who comes into this fight 4-1 inside the UFC. He's a name at 145 who quickly became respected. And Calvin is primarily dangerous for his boxing ability. In his debut, he went toe-to-toe with Andre Fili, landed some really nice power shots in that fight. And then, he really impressed us against Shane Burgos. Went toe-to-toe in the pocket, landing some beautiful jabs in the first round. And what's more impressive about that win for Calvin Kattar is he actually started to get, he was getting beaten up badly in that second round. If you go back and watch the fight, Shane was landing to the body, man. It looked like Amir Khani all over again. So what's so impressive is in the third round, when it looked like it was going towards Shane, Calvin Kattar found a perfectly timed uppercut. Really impressive. Against Fishgold and Lamas as well. First round TKOs. This guy has a very good boxing ability inside the octagon. Some people don't know Calvin Kattar also spent quite a bit of time in high school wrestling. So his takedown defense was probably already there and then improved drastically when he entered MMA. So good size, very good boxing ability, and also an underrated wrestler that most people will probably find out soon how good of a wrestler he is. But let me tell you now, he's a good wrestler. So the one time he did have problem was against Renato Moicano. Now, so here's my breakdown for this fight and the story I see being of this fight, if that makes any sense. I smoked that bowl, so maybe it doesn't, but here's what I'm trying to say of Calvin Kattar. He keeps his hands very close to his face. He keeps a high guard very close to his face, and he likes to counter. Very rarely is he the aggressor in there. Now, he has to be here. He has to be an aggressor, because if you give Zabit space behind him, for a guy, man, like I'm saying, for a guy who has spent so long training in all these different types of fighting, his intelligence is on another level, you know, and he's so well rounded. So I feel to beat Zabit, you're gonna have to do maybe what Jeremy Stephens did, which Jeremy Stephens didn't win. But if you can get Zabit, if you're still in it, the fight with Zabit late second into the third round, that's probably the only time Zabit slowed down. So my best advice to Calvin Kattar is set a strong pace and just stick to it. Stick to it and hope you have the better conditioning, and hope you will see the changes, the fatigue in that late second and in the third of Zabit. But only one guy has been able to show us that Zabit, you know, maybe isn't a complete freak. You know, the guy slowed down a little bit against Jeremy Stephens, and that was the only guy that did it. So for Calvin Kattar, he ate a lot of leg kicks against Renato Moicano. Now, Zabit is just... I love this guy everywhere. He has some great trips, good calf kicks, good high kicks, spinning fists, stepping knees. He is great on the mat. He is great up against the fence. His composure, his throws up against the fence. Just go back and watch his knee bar against Brandon Davis, and I know Brandon Davis was having some success in that fight. But if you look at the way Zabit finishes him, I know we had 2 knee bars that night. Zabit, he was on his back, searching for a rear naked choke. Brandon Davis was shuffling, and as Zabit fell off, he already knew what he was doing. He knew he was going to fall off 10 seconds before he fell off. And he grabbed the ankle, and that's when the commentary team went mad. And rightfully so. This guy spent, I mean, I sound like a broken record, guys. This guy spent 11 years in a boarding school training 3 times a day for this. He wasn't put on this earth to do anything other than be a trained killer. And I just can't bet against it, especially not in his home country. I haven't picked against him yet. He's a guy I strongly believe in his abilities to fight. I certainly won't be one saying hype train derailed when he does lose, because I understand that this guy has concrete evidence to back up he is a great mixed martial artist. The only thing he doesn't have is experience fighting high level guys, and you don't get that until you get that. And now this is a step up in competition. I expect him to rise to the occasion. I think he's going to fight a very calm, cool, collected kickboxing masterclass against Calvin Kattar and mix it up when he feels he needs to mix it up. So I'm going to take Zabit via decision. We take a look at the odds. -300 for Zabit. It's deep, but like I said, guys, I'm a strong believer in this guy's ability to fight. Calvin Kattar +250. You know, it's well worth taking a go at Calvin if you believe he can do it. But maybe we can do what I said a few weeks ago. Maybe we can look at some type of cover here, because this is a very decent main event. That's only 3 rounds. You know, that's kind of sad. And Calvin Kattar has impressed us, but Zabit has. I don't know how much he's impressed you guys, but personally speaking, he has massively impressed me. Okay, guys. So as always, leave your comments. I appreciate you. Thank you again for 2,000 subscribers. And yeah, and I'll catch you in the comments. Peace.